What is up, guys? Danny back again from the Couch Gnomes, and holy schnot, it's Gnomenclature! The PlayStation 5 is finally here, and there are so many new games that I cannot wait to play. Like SpiderMan Miles Morales, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and of course, freaking Bugsnax. But we can't move on to a new generation of gaming without first recognizing the amazing games that we've played these past 7 years. There have been so many different games who have blessed our screens on the PlayStation 4 that I wanted to take the time to reflect on them before swapping out the DualShock 4 for the DualSense. So, let's break down my top 10 PlayStation 4 exclusives. So first, let me preface by saying this list is entirely opinion-based. This is my personal top 10 PlayStation 4 games. This has nothing to do with overall ranking, which one has the best Metacritic score, anything like that. This is just me ranking my number 10 to my number 1. So first, let me explain the rules for how I decided what games can make it onto this list. Anything on this list has to be a PlayStation 4 console exclusive, so basically nothing that's ever been on the Xbox One. So games like The Witcher and Overwatch won't make it onto this list. However, there are a handful of PS4 games that have made the way over to PC, and I'm basically just going to ignore that ever happened. Not to say that having a PC port is bad by any means, but if I decided that that makes them ineligible, I'd be missing out on a lot of first-party Sony experiences. Okay, those are all the rules. How about we get started? So the first title on my list of PlayStation 4 games is Death Stranding. Also, as a heads up, a lot of the games on this list I do have the Steelbook for, so look forward to that. Last year I talked about how I enjoyed Death Stranding, but I wasn't really having fun with it. The gameplay was a chore and not necessarily enjoyable to play. And initially going into it, we had just mindlessly slogged through nearly 3 years of unusual and abnormal trailers that never truly explained anything about the game other than that it's weird. That being said, it was an innovative piece in terms of gameplay. It was unique in the way I was expected to explore the world of Death Stranding, and it had a fascinating, deep-rooted, and obscure story to undergo. Exploring a dystopian America as Sam Porter Bridges was a fresh, even though sometimes tiresome, new experience from the mind of Hideo Kojima. I recall sitting back and listening to podcasts as I hiked through mountain ranges and trudged through riverbeds to drop off a box of who knows what to computer-generated holograms. The tranquil atmosphere of reclining back and marching my way from objective to objective was very cathartic. But there would also be moments of me tripping down a mountainside and making my little jar baby cry so much that he exhausted himself, and decided not to tell me where the freaky ghost who's trying to eat me and could only be murdered by a grenade of my own blood went. Yeah, if this is your first time hearing about this game, I am so sorry. It is not going to make sense. When I gave my impressions on this game the first time, I'd only made it to Chapter 3, which I stated was a very difficult chapter to make it through because it was long, drawn out, and boring. And I still stand by that. But a few months later, after forcing myself to finish that chapter, I couldn't put the controller down. I powered through the rest of Death Stranding in probably just over a week, getting to finally experience the full story that Kojima Productions intended for me to see. I met new characters, got to explore their backstories, and learn how they got to be to where they are now. And I can say confidently, after rolling credits on this almost 80-hour experience, that I still really don't have any idea what's going on. But luckily I didn't have to in order to actually enjoy this game. The way every single player was linked together by universally placing tools, signs, and structures to allow other porters to deliver their goods was genuinely enjoyable. Being able to traverse the continental United States and stumble across a bridge placed by Joe Schmo McGee gave me the motivation to continue on making sure that all these poor saps locked up in their doomsday bunkers got their Amazon Prime deliveries. You never actually meet anyone who helps build these advancements, but you get to see their name plastered all over the planet, so that's pretty dope. Even though Death Stranding in a nutshell is just a compilation of every delivery, trailing, and fetch quest we've ever played in any other game ever, its inventive new take on a strand-focused universe and an atypical control scheme made for an original experience that, even though I can't recommend it to everybody, it's an experience I'll never forget myself. Whew, man. I've already tired myself out from that first game, so, oh, man. Out of the gate, the PlayStation 4 didn't have too many strong exclusives. But after a couple months of breaking in that console and rubbing off those thumbsticks, we finally got our first big PlayStation 4 exclusive. Infamous Second Son. Second Son's a game starring Delson Rowe, a young hooligan just trying to live his life while always being in the shadow of the town sheriff / his older brother, Reggie. Until one day the two of them are attacked by bioterrorists, or more commonly named conduits. Delsin starts off being terrified until he learns that he himself has been a conduit his entire life. But with the ability to duplicate powers from other conduits and having never actually crossed paths with one, he had no idea of his secret capabilities. From here on out, Delsin sets out to help a small town family from the threat of the Department of Unified Protection. And to do that, you need to absorb more and more powers from some escaped conduits. Each ability you absorb grants you a new arsenal of skills and attacks to use on your enemies, as well as traversing around Seattle. And as you unlock these abilities, you can switch between them freely by chowing down on the natural resources from chimney stacks, neon signs, and corner store video shops. Exploring the busy city of Seattle, Washington by using your newfound abilities is such a unique experience. My favorite is absolutely running and jumping around with the neon power, which has to be the majority of the player base's favorite because it's the only power that got a standalone DLC. I was really hoping to get something about Eugene and his video game addiction, but no dice. Another thing that made Infamous so cool is that it was one of the first games to really implement DualShock 4's motion controls. Right out of the gate, you're spray painting graffiti on a billboard by taking the controller, rotating it in your hand, and shaking it like an actual can of spray paint. And then you hold the controller like the nozzle and just... I mean, nowadays this seems weird and gimmicky, but back in 2014, this was some cool stuff. And just imagine the potential this could have had with VR. Putting on the headset, walking around Seattle, and just spray painting all over the place. There was some real potential with this, but of course Sucker Punch had to go off and start making Samurais R Us. The staple of the Infamous series is the karma system, the mechanic of keeping your character's alignment weighted towards the decisions you make. This can affect both story beats and gameplay elements. I loved it so much, I played through the game twice back to back so I could see both endings. And a few years later, I played through it again on stream so I could get the Platinum Trophy.
Enjoy your powers.
Even though I did play Infamous 1 and 2 prior to Second Son even coming out, they were a little bit older and aged a little bit differently by the time Second Son was here. So I always felt like Infamous Second Son was my first Infamous game. Plus, I think Delsin's appearance kind of has an influence on me. After 23 years of only really enjoying one turn-based RPG franchise, Persona 5 made its way into my life, and now I'm excited to be a part of a brand new fandom. You start Persona 5 as a young thief with a sick-ass mask, jumping across a bunch of chandeliers over a huge bustling casino, while trying to escape from some spooky ghost shadow cops, while having some intense comms with a team of thieves that you don't recognize at this point. But don't worry, you will. Eventually you get captured, and now you're being interrogated by this detective who wants you to go back and tell her 130-hour story in a matter of 15 minutes. To sum it up, you're Joker, who is falsely accused of assaulting a woman, and after being found guilty, you get expelled and forced to move in with a family friend until your probation is up. Once you start your new school, you begin meeting this colorful cast of fellow students who are all struggling with the same issue: evil adults. After a few strange world-bending events, you start traveling into the metaverse, which allows you to enter the minds of these crooked adults, battle their true vision of themselves, and change their hearts forever, as the Phantom Thieves. But obviously a bunch of teenagers with sticks and toy guns can't take on a bunch of monsters alone. So you get the power to summon a persona, the manifestation of your true personality. Or in your case, a metric butt ton of persona. I guess this could be a way of saying that Joker has multiple personalities? Maybe shouldn't read into it too deep. Persona is such a strange game to try to explain to people. It's a game where you play as a student who's going to school, getting a job, doing his homework, making coffee, and a whole bunch of other mundane tasks. It's not easy to sell someone on. Persona is honestly the type of game that I would want to hand you my copy, tell you to take your time with it, see how you like it, and go from there. I know my buddy John Princeton's actually been struggling with this, so... Actually, hold on. He might be taking a shit. Here we go. Hey John, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good. How you doing?
Good. How do you like Persona 5?
It's not my thing. It's kind of boring. Very flashy. Music's dope. Characters have no depth. It's alright. I mean, it's not my favorite thing in the world. I mean, I'm more of a Dragon Quest XI, Legend of Dragoon kind of guy.
Okay, cool. Proves my point. Thank you very much, sir.
Alright, you're welcome.
I honestly didn't know if I was going to enjoy Persona 5 or not. I initially wanted to buy Persona 4 Golden on the Vita so I could kind of test the waters with the franchise and then see if I wanted to move on to 5 from there. Turns out my Vita actually died at that point, so I had to return the game and just take a shot in the dark and go with Persona 5. And I'm glad I did it, because I actually love this game so damn much. Exploring Tokyo is a very enjoyable part of this game. It's the more average and mundane part, but there are so many shops and activities to interact with, you'll always find something new around the corner. In the real world is where you're going to need to hang out with all your new friends individually, to increase their stats and make them better confidants, making it so that they're more efficient in battle, and helping you complete the palaces by your given deadline. And speaking of the palaces, this is where things get really cool. The palaces are the dungeons you'll go through, trying to change the hearts of the corrupt adults. They range from a castle to a museum, to a pyramid, to even a space station. Each palace will typically have its own gimmick and unique puzzle mechanic to differentiate it from the previous ones. And within each palace, you're going to be fighting a bunch of shadows. The combat system consists of melee, ranged, and magic attacks, and each persona, shadow, and member of your team have different weaknesses and resistances, making it an extreme pro-tier game of rock, paper, scissors. Persona 5's artistic style is probably its most standout feature. It's got a very illustrated comic book aesthetic to its text boxes and phone UI, with a very intense utilization of the red and black color scheme. Couple that with the ungodly amazing soundtrack, and goddamn did Atlas put a lot of care into this game's aesthetic. Now I haven't played it myself yet, but at this point, Persona 5 Royal is out, and this is the definitive way to play Persona 5. It's got more story, more abilities, more characters, more everything. So if I have convinced you to try Persona 5, make sure you pick up Royal. It's definitely the better way to play. The Persona franchise had always been the type of series that I never thought was for me, something I never thought I'd be into. And thankfully, because I had the right people around that convinced me to put the controller in my hand and the disc in the tray, I'm a fan of this franchise, and I cannot wait for probably 10 years from now when Persona 6 comes out. Well, gang, they did it. They did it. They made a Final Fantasy game that I actually liked. Awkwardly enough, number 7 on my list is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Along with my introductory sentiments to Persona 5, I don't enjoy many turn-based RPGs. After a decade of trying different Final Fantasy games, I've never enjoyed a single one of them, not even the non-turn-based ones. It just seemed like a series that would never grab me, and I was okay with that. But I knew the overwhelming love that the series fans had for Final Fantasy VII. I wanted to experience that story, but I couldn't bring myself to play the original game. Then in 2015, they revealed they were remaking the game from the ground up for a new generation. People were flipping their lids, and I was excited for them, but I couldn't help but think, is this really going to change the franchise for me? I remained skeptical for a few months, until they started talking about how they were going to change the combat system for a modern era, and all I could really think to myself was,
Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
I was now intrigued, but if a full remake taking away the turn-based combat system wasn't going to turn me into a Final Fantasy fan, nothing would. Now, I can't say that I'm a full-fledged Final Fantasy fan just yet, but Final Fantasy VII Remake is amazing. The combat is exactly what I needed it to be to become fully invested in this game. Actively being able to slash down anything that the game throws at me in an open 3D space combat arena was perfection. Picking up new weapons as I progressed through the story and being able to unlock new abilities and materia was so enjoyable. I ended up primarily using the hard edge with Cloud, until I would unlock a new weapon. Then I would just swap out until I perfected the ability and then switch back to the hard edge. Staggering enemies to increase my damage output, along with having to maintain the ATB gauge for higher level attacks, really helped create a distinctive feeling from the otherwise familiar 3D combat system. And being able to look back and see this now become this? Bro, I can't even. It's so exciting. The cast of Final Fantasy VII specifically has always been very recognizable to me. Probably because they all showed up in Kingdom Hearts at some point, but I could always tell you who Cloud, Tifa, Barret, and Aerith were. However, I really couldn't tell you anything else about them. After playing through the story, I could tell you how edgy yet caring Cloud can be, how much of a sweetheart Aerith is, how protective and abrasive Barret is, and how much I freaking love Tifa Lockhart. I actually have a few metal posters bookmarked on my computer of Tifa that I don't think I could ever show on YouTube, but I'm probably going to buy them. Along with character building, the set pieces in Midgar are just staggeringly amazing, especially the Honeybee dance segment. After constant exploration and fighting giant sewer rat dogs, being able to just sit back and do a fun rhythm-based mission was really fun. And listen, I've said it enough on stream, where I am a comfortably heterosexual man. But Cloud in that black and blue dress, homie about to make me act up. One complaint I've heard from a lot of fans of the original game is how the remake is just a padded out version of a really small sliver of the original game. Now I get that it's probably frustrating for people who want the full experience of Final Fantasy VII in this newfound glory all at once, but for me, I want this experience to continue on over the course of this upcoming generation. A new Final Fantasy VII every couple of years to expand and enhance the story of the original sounds incredible to me. Although I do fully agree that those bundles of side quests back to back were really annoying. As much as I truly did enjoy Final Fantasy VII Remake, I don't believe this is going to change the way I feel about the older games. But with Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 coming the next few years, I am beyond excited to play more. And maybe, just maybe, we could get a remake of a similarly loved franchise from the same company that I've never played but totally would if they gave it the same treatment. Oh, number 6. This one was divisive. Some people loved it, some people hated it, and it made me cry like one of those babies on TikTok where the mom's carrying them and pretends to hit their head on the wall. Yeah, I cried a lot. Number 6 on my list is The Last of Us Part 2. I feel like this game is super difficult to talk about because there's so many moments in it that I wouldn't want to spoil for anyone. I feel like they make this experience, and if you know what they are going in, it kind of takes away from the impact that it has. So I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers with the exception of one big one, which I feel like if you've seen any trailers or watched anybody review it, you already know it exists. And if you want to play it safe and not have to worry about spoilers at all, just know number 6, The Last of Us, I'll put a timestamp here for when number 5 is, if you want to skip it all together. So, Ellie. She's older, wiser, tougher, and really, really scary sometimes. The premise of the sequel is that Ellie's out seeking revenge on a crew of survivors, known as the Wolves, who took something very important away from her. But probably the biggest moment in this game for anyone who didn't go out of their way to spoil it for themselves on Twitter was the switch between playing as Ellie to playing as Abby, the leader of the pack of wolves that you're chasing after. Remember when we got that first trailer that featured Abby and everyone thought it was Ellie's mom? Like, what a freaking time to be alive. Like, I bet Neil Druckmann was just like, what a bunch of stupids. Like, Now, I personally really enjoyed the switch between Ellie and Abby. It gives a new perspective on the game. But I knew a lot of people who really didn't. I saw so many people rejecting Abby as a playable character, saying it made the game bad. Some people went as far as to attack the voice actor Laura Bailey over social media. So Laura, if you're watching this, which you're probably not, but either way, I want to apologize on behalf of all gamers that aren't total dickholes. We don't approve of their actions and don't wish to be associated with those Neanderthals. Love you, Laura. The Last of Us starts out as a story of revenge, our hero being wronged, and her journey to get back at the people who put her in this situation in the first place. But we later realize after switching protagonists and seeing the effects that Ellie's actions have on Abby and her friends, that everyone in the apocalypse is just an asshole, and no one's really in the right. Everyone's just doing what they have to survive. The weekend this game came out, I was forced to hang out with a couple friends who were home on vacation, and all I could think about was going home and seeing what heart-shattering and tear-jerking moment was going to happen next. But while we were hanging out, my one friend asked me how the game was, and I started by saying it was fun, but then I had to backpedal and be like, well, it's not fun. It's actually like really depressing and exhausting, but I am enjoying it. But I'm not really like enjoying it, but does that make sense? Essentially, what I was trying to say was that this is such a quality game, and it's so well crafted. But at the same time, the content within it is so intense. There's so much sorrow, there's so much disappointment, and there's so much sadness that it really drains you sometimes. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game. So my thoughts basically reflect the same way I feel about Death Stranding. A very good game that isn't necessarily fun. The gameplay is way better than Death Stranding in my opinion, but the moment-to-moment actions we're forced to watch and live through can be pretty brutal. You're essentially a third-party observer to the murder spree Ellie and Abby are sent on. The gameplay of Last of Us Part 2 was a nice and refreshing upgrade from the original. Ellie and Abby were significantly more fluid to control compared to Joel back in 2013. More flexible, more mobility options. Now, if only we could have gotten those rope physics more than twice throughout the game. The most enveloping feature about The Last of Us was the realism of the characters. Not necessarily visually, even though they look so lifelike, but more so in their actions and words. While fighting through hordes of wolves, they'll often discover a dead teammate with an arrow through their skull and scream their name out in agony, making that character feel like much more than a bunch of polygons. And then there's the Seraphites, the second group of enemies you encounter. They're quiet, stealthy enemies that whistle to alert each other of what's happening and how close they are to finding you. And bro, if I was to tell you that they were probably one of the most intimidating enemy types that I ever dealt with in a video game, just anytime they were skulking around, I was tripping, man. They're nerve-wracking. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the amount of care that Naughty Dog put into the accessibility options in Last of Us Part 2. As a gamer who's privileged enough to not have accessibility problems, I am beyond proud of Naughty Dog's innovation to make this game accessible to everybody. People with vision impairments have the option to set the world to minimal colors to be able to see where they're going. There are customizable difficulty settings for those unable to keep up with the default flow of combat, and even a setting allowing you to ping to see what direction you need to go in the story, and making it easier to see collectibles and resources from afar. Okay, so I did use this last one quite a bit trying to get the platinum, but it was super useful, so if you're still going for that trophy grind, I recommend using that. The Last of Us Part 2 is such a difficult game to review, because I see why people didn't like it. I see why people had issue with its story direction, but I disagree. I think this game had a strong and difficult story that it needed to tell, and the team at Naughty Dog made it happen. Now the jury's still out on whether this is actually going to win Game of the Year or not, especially with Cyberpunk being pushed so far back into the year, but guess time will tell. Don't say it, Danny. Don't say it, Danny. Don't say it. Everyone always says it when they talk about this game. It's not necessary. It makes you look generic and lame. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. This game makes you feel like Spider-Man. At the halfway point, we've got Marvel's Spider-Man. Looking back at my top 10 games of 2018 video, I remembered how much I adored Spider-Man, how much fun I had, how invested I was in the story, and just how much care Insomniac put into building a game around arguably the most popular superhero of all time. The sheer amount of customization you have with your Spider-Man when choosing your costumes and abilities makes your explorative and combat experience a little bit different from everyone else's. Some people might enjoy rocking out with Spider-Punk's ultimate ability, while others might enjoy an upgraded focus bar, allowing for more finishing moves in a shorter time frame. I personally like to rock the Web Blossom, so I didn't have to waste too much time fighting groups of thugs trying to rob a jewelry store. You can always go and web shoot as a blazing and start beating down on hordes of enemies, but it can be more beneficial to you if you choose to plant web bombs and other gadgets to thin the herd a bit before going in for the kill. Discovering every nook and cranny of New York City as Peter Parker was an extraordinary time, especially while collecting backpacks and taking snapshots of different locations around the city, each with its own little story that Peter reminisces over. It really helps build out the world for not only Spider-Man, but Marvel games as a whole. After years of fairly good to pretty bad Spider-Man games, Insomniac gave us a definitive way to make ourselves the ultimate friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, while developing an original Spider-Man story of their own, introducing Miles as an up-and-coming Spiderling, and dealing with the broken relationship between Peter and Mary Jane. Oh, and there's a few bad guys here and there too, they're kind of a big deal. I actually struggled a little bit with finding out where this game placed on this list. After having a couple discussions with friends, they felt that The Last of Us definitely deserved to be above Spider-Man, thinking it's a better game. And that may very well be the case, but this is a list of my favorite PlayStation 4 games. So just because a game has higher quality doesn't mean I enjoyed it any more than another game. And I think in this case, as much as I love The Last of Us, Spider-Man PS4 was just a better time for me. So ultimately I decided that I enjoyed Spider-Man more than The Last of Us Part 2. And tomorrow night I plan to pop in Miles Morales on the PS5 and live through this experience all over again. And then I'll probably get the Platinum, and then I'll go back and do Spider-Man Remastered, use the Andrew Garfield suit, and then Platinum that one. It's a lot of trophies to get, but trophies are my drug, people. Leave me alone. Number 4 on my list, and my 2017 Game of the Year, Horizon Zero Dawn. 2 words. Robot, dinosaurs. And yes, I know there are more than just dinosaurs, but if you're going to tell me that the Thunderjaw is not the reason you bought this game, you're lying. Exploring this huge open world as a capable outsider, fighting raiders and some robot bison, and discovering how the hell we as a civilization downgraded ourselves from cell phones and 3DSs to sticks and giant tripwires. But I think the modernized primitive weaponry had a unique charm to it, and that was one of the bigger selling points of this game. Again, after robot dinosaurs. Progressing through the main story and trying to survive in this technologically advanced wilderness was both fun and stressful. Running through a mess of trees to then get slapped by an invisible mecha sabertooth was exhilarating yet daunting. I absolutely adored the monumentous set pieces of secret locations like the cauldrons, or discovering boss-like machines such as the majestic Stormbird, the destructive Thunderjaw, and the somewhat cute Bellowback? I don't know, something about that sack of green juice was just adorable in a killer robot sort of way. Probably my favorite part of fighting these big bad bots is how each and every one of them has unique weak points on them, making every encounter with a new machine fresh and distinctive. I loved my time with this game back in 2017, but that was before I was really a trophy hunter, so I never looked into getting the platinum for it. However, after being challenged by a friend who wanted to outdo me in platinums by the end of 2020, I knew I had to go back and wrap up Horizon. And I did. But picking up the sticks again for an older game is normally strange. Trying to relearn the controls in the middle of a mission is a tough challenge. But when I grabbed the controller and jumped back in, immediately being dropped into a fight with a rock breaker, it all just flooded back to me. I was placing tripwires, planting traps, and dodge rolling away from humongous landslides like I'd been doing it for years. Perhaps it was dumb luck that my brain just remembered how to play Horizon, but it felt really cool to be able to dodge that learning curve all over again. Leading up to the reveal of the PlayStation 5, there were multiple rumors of a Horizon sequel. So imagine my reaction when I finally saw it come to life on stream. In conclusion, all I really have left to say about how much I'm excited for Horizon are these 3 words. Giant robot turtle. Number 3 on my list is Samurais Are Us. I know I jokingly called out Sucker Punch earlier for moving on from Infamous to make this game, but Ghost of Tsushima is practically the definition of a masterpiece. Ghost of Tsushima was a game that got revealed at E3, but I really wasn't all that excited for the game itself. The gameplay looked cool, and rarely has a Sony first-party studio let me down, so I knew I was going to buy it. Then earlier this year when we had the PlayStation State of Play that showed off a bit of gameplay, and we got to see the gorgeous world and the guiding wind mechanic for your waypoints around Tsushima, I'm a man of simple tastes, and I like wind. Over the last 2 generations of games, there's been one thing most gamers have been asking for aside from a new Splinter Cell game. Or Metroid Prime 4. Or Cyberpunk. Or Half-Life 3. Man, gamers are needy, damn. But something they've asked for a lot is an Assassin's Creed game based in feudal Japan. And up until now, we still don't have that, but Ghost of Tsushima is probably the closest thing we've ever gotten. In Ghost, you play as Jin Sakai, a young samurai fighting to defend his home and his family's honor from an invasion of Mongol warriors. But the samurai are outmatched when the Mongols use dirty and downright wicked tactics, which is completely against the samurai code. Jin realizes he can't defeat the Mongols without evening the playing field, but he has to do it at the cost of his family's honor. The week leading up to this game's release, a lot of outlets said this game was very difficult, which spooked me a little bit. In my first few hours with the game, I really felt it, but eventually I realized that it's not so much the game's difficult, as much as it has an intricate combat system that's difficult to master. The special thing about Ghost of Tsushima's combat system is that it incorporates stances. Each stance is meant to counter a specific enemy type. Stone stance is for swordsmen, water stance is for shields, wind stance is for spears, and moon stance is for the big old broody boys. You'll progressively unlock more stances as you level up, but until then you'll be forced to fight some enemies with a stance that isn't truly meant for them. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. But I like this a lot. It keeps the combat fresh and prevents it from becoming too samey. Plus, if you really want to, you can start almost every fight with a standoff, and potentially just kill 5 or 6 dudes right out of the gate. So when I'm writing the scripts for these videos, there's a lot of words I find myself using pretty frequently, like unique, and breathtaking, and but. But, if there's one word I use the most, it's explore. And I'm going to use this word specifically because Ghost of Tsushima is probably the most exploria game that you're ever going to explore. Every inch of this world has unique, damn it, and breathtaking, damn it, sights to see. And I don't know if I would even see nearly a percentage of it if that adorable little yellow bird didn't swoop in and distract me from my objective every 2 minutes. Hey, come here, you little shit. Give me a haiku! There are so many tasks, collectibles, and side quests to do in Tsushima that it feels like not a single section of the map is wasted. And even if there aren't objectives in a certain area, there are magnificent and awe-inspiring environments to feast your eyes upon before spending 20 minutes setting up the perfect shot for your Instagram post. Even if half the photo mode images and videos haven't left my console before this video. The search for headbands and bamboo shoots to strike with your sword are just a mindless and enjoyable activity to do. I practically 100%ed the first section of the map before even stepping foot into Chapter 2. Ghost of Tsushima was a gratifying surprise for this year, and I am so glad I got to play it. Especially because I got to see Jin's butt. Let us go back. It's 2016. The final entry of my favorite video game character for my favorite video game franchise is coming to an end. There's joy, there's sadness, there's pure heart-wrenching despair, because the end of an era is coming. For now, anyway. Uncharted 4 was the end of Nathan Drake's story, but never the end of my undying love for this franchise. I came late to the Uncharted bandwagon since I had an Xbox 360 instead of a PlayStation. But when I finally got a PS3, Uncharted 2 was one of the first games I tried, which led me to playing the full franchise, and now every time Sony has a damn event, I'm waiting for them to show off something new from Naughty Dog and Uncharted. After 3 grand adventures with Elena and Sully, Nate has finally decided to settle down and start a simple life with Elena. Or so we thought! Turns out, Nate has a long-lost brother named Sam that we never knew about. But Nate thought he was dead? Hold on, what? Oh, this is wild. So Nate's brother's being threatened by this old dude that he used to share a cell with in jail. And now Nate has to break out the old gun holsters and help Sam find a lost pirate treasure. Yeah, that escalated quickly. So in a nutshell, you're exploring with Nate and Sam, trying to make some cash money and finally settle down for good. Uncharted 4 features marvelous landscapes for fighting enemies and solving puzzles, from snowy mountain caves to the blazing plains of Madagascar. You'd think you were in a Planet Earth documentary with how many biomes there are in this game. Uncharted 4 builds upon characters that we love so dearly and makes them more mature, featuring some of the best acting performances from Nolan North, Troy Baker, Emily Rose, and the entire cast. Every time I feel single and alone, I watch that scene of Nate and Elena play fighting on the couch, and it makes me feel even more single and alone. I'm just really happy for my favorite fictional couple of all time. The reason Uncharted 4 is so high on my list is because it isn't just a good game. It's a powerful and symbolic end to one of video games' biggest icons from these last few years. And without Uncharted 4, we wouldn't have Uncharted Lost Legacy, which was DLC that got way too big for DLC and became one standalone game starring 2 of the most badass women in the Uncharted universe. And I'm watching you, Naughty Dog. Look, if you're not going to give me another Nate story, I suggest you get back to that business deal of sorts that Sam and Sully were getting into at the end of Uncharted 4. You know, maybe they run into Cutter along the way, some shenanigans ensue. I'm not telling you how to make your games, I'm just saying, you know, I really like that. If you had asked me the moment that I rolled credits on Uncharted 4, this spectacular game, I would have promised you that it was going to be my favorite PlayStation 4 game of all time. And as much as I love Uncharted, there's one game, one spectacular game, that came out and outshined anything that we as mere mortals could recognize as an amazing video game. And that game is Knack. Okay, now stick with me on this one. I know this game got tossed around as a meme for all PlayStation players, but with a closer look at Knack, it's probably the perfect PlayStation 4 game. Being one of the first games to show off the power of the PlayStation 4, with the sheer amount of artifacts on the screen at any given time, Knack was a showcase of what was to come later of this generation. I got you, didn't I? You can admit it. You can let me know in the comments. I'm pretty sure y'all thought with the lower third and everything, you thought that was my favorite game, didn't you? I got you. All right, okay. Jokes aside, my real favorite PlayStation 4 game of all time. Drum roll, please. God of War was my game of the year for 2018, and not only is it one of my favorite games of this generation, it's probably my favorite game of all time. It's honestly hard to imagine anything else taking this place on the list. While going through multiple other YouTube videos to make sure I wasn't missing any important PS4 games, every single one of them had God of War as number 1. And rightfully so. With the team at Santa Monica taking a character universally known for being a raging, bloodthirsty killer and giving him what resembles a heart, this was a shocking surprise I don't believe anyone expected. Kratos as a character has become more fleshed out, given more emotion, trying to manage his anger while teaching his son to be a man, while still being capable of murdering anyone who tries to lay a hand on his little boy. The cast of misfits and freaks that you meet throughout the game are incredible, At no point are any of these characters just throwaway husks to move the story forward. All of them are there to either guide you and return when needed to, or they're there to oppose you and make your journey more difficult. Transitioning Kratos from a set of flaming blades to an ice-imbued throwing axe was a clever way to show his growth not only as a man/god, but as a warrior. Becoming more cunning and learning a way of combating something from far away, rather than requiring close-quarter combat. Oh, and by the way, that feeling when the Leviathan axe flies back and lands in the palm of your hand? Oh my god, it feels so good every single time. Now, I probably won't be replaying God of War again until just before Ragnarok drops, but if I happen to see anything about a patch that, lets me play on the PS5 and I can feel that axe slam into my hand with the DualSense, I might just have to do it sooner rather than later. Atreus is also a welcome change to the God of War formula. Though he's pretty whiny and annoying to start, as a fighter, he's insanely useful. Rarely requiring you to save or revive him, he stands his own ground and progressively increases his skill set, making him a force to be reckoned with. Partner this along with the onslaught of abilities Kratos will unlock, the God of War and his son become a nearly unstoppable duo of gods. One of the most respectable gameplay mechanics of God of War is the one-shot camera. That's right, in case you missed it, that camera doesn't cut unless you're fast traveling or you die. If you start and finish the game in one sitting without feeling the cold embrace of death, you'll see it all in one incredible shot. For a nearly 20-hour story, that's some commendable stuff. I don't want to get too sappy in this video like I did back in 2018, but the relationship between Kratos and Atreus was very similar to the relationship between myself and my father growing up. Everything's better now, but the comparisons I can make between us and this pair of gods is uncanny. Much like Horizon Zero Dawn, I didn't platinum God of War my first time around. But earlier this year, I decided to go back and make it my 50th platinum trophy, and, well, take a look at how that turned out.
Thank you, Atreus. I love you bunches. You're my favorite son. Don't say anything. 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 Baby, let's go! Yes! Ah! Yes! 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 I'm sweaty, dude. I'm sweaty right now.
Difficult to be happy about anything when you're a reanimated head.
50th platinum, baby! Yes! Yes, 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 yes!
Oh my god, I did it. I did it. I did it. With a list of masterclass titles from Sony's many first-party studios, it was definitely hard to make this list. But the one thing I knew the entire time was that God of War was bound to be my favorite game of the PlayStation 4. Each one of the games on this list, throughout their flaws and imperfections, hold a special place in my mind and heart as some of the best exclusives the PlayStation 4 has to offer. And of course, there are many more games like Bloodborne or Ratchet & Clank, or Knack. So be sure to let me know in the comments what your favorite PlayStation 4 games are. Now, if all things go according to plan, this video should be dropping the day before the PlayStation 5 launches, which means that after this comes out, the day following I'll be doing a PlayStation 5 unboxing video. So if you want to stick around and see that, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It'll probably be a little bit later in the evening, but it's definitely going to be coming, so hang around for that. I'm excited to open that damn thing. Also, be sure to go check me out over on Twitch, twitch.tv/CouchGnomes. I'll be streaming Miles Morales on Friday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a good time. I really hope you guys will be joining me for that, my first real venture into a PlayStation 5, and I want you guys to be along for the ride. With another console generation in the books, it's time to start things fresh and keep momentum going into the PlayStation 5. So make sure you stick around for another 7 or 8 years so I can do my top 10 PlayStation 5 games of all time. But if you do want something a little bit sooner, I'm currently in the process of working on my top 10 games of 2020 video, as well as my most anticipated games of 2021. At this rate, Cyberpunk might get pushed into that video. We'll have to see how this all goes. But those are some exciting things I have coming, so you make sure you stick around for those as well. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments what are your favorite PlayStation 4 games and how excited are you for the PlayStation 5? Are you grabbing one on launch day? Are you going to wait a little bit? Let me know what you're thinking of this next generation of PlayStation. And as always, if it's your first time checking out the content and you want to stick around and see some more, do yourself a favor, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notifications every time a new video comes out. And I will see you guys next time.